There is a moment that many people are quietly waiting for, a moment where someone finally looks at them and says, "You're ready now." Ready to start the project, ready to speak your ideas, ready to build something real, ready to become the person you keep imagining. Most people don't say this out loud, but deep down they are waiting for a signal, some form of approval, a green light, a moment where the world officially recognizes them as legitimate. So they wait, they prepare, they learn, they study, they watch other people doing the thing they want to do, and they tell themselves a story. Soon. Soon they will have enough knowledge. Soon they will have enough confidence. Soon someone will open the door. But here's the strange part. For most people, that moment never comes. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because the signal they're waiting for was never designed to exist. There is no universal moment where the world gathers together to decide that you are now allowed to begin. No committee, no invisible authority reviewing your life, no hidden system that distributes permission to individuals who are finally qualified enough to try. Yet psychologically, many of us behave as if that system exists. We behave as if someone, somewhere, holds the final stamp of legitimacy. And until that stamp arrives, we hesitate, we delay, we stay in preparation mode. We hover at the edge of action without ever stepping forward. This is one of the quietest traps of modern life, because it feels responsible, it feels intelligent, it feels like patience, but in many cases, it is simply waiting for a yes that no one is ever going to give. And the longer you wait for that external yes, the harder it becomes to recognize a simple truth. The most powerful permission you will ever receive is the one you decide to give yourself. To understand why this illusion is so powerful, we need to look at something psychologists discovered decades ago. In the late 1960s, psychologist Martin Seligman conducted a series of experiments that became famous in behavioral science. He called the phenomenon learned helplessness. The concept was disturbing. When individuals repeatedly experience situations where their actions don't seem to change the outcome, they begin to internalize a belief: my actions don't matter. Over time, they stop trying to escape or change the situation, even when the escape becomes possible. Even when the barriers disappear, they remain passive. Not because they are incapable, but because they have learned that effort feels pointless. Now, consider how most people grow up. From childhood, life is structured around authority. Teachers evaluate your performance, parents approve or disapprove your choices, institutions determine your opportunities. You submit assignments, you wait for grades, you apply for positions, you wait for responses, you request permission, you wait for approval. Action and validation become tightly connected. You do something, someone else decides whether it was good enough. And slowly, something subtle happens. Your sense of agency begins to shift outward. Instead of asking yourself whether something is worth doing, you begin asking whether someone else will accept it. Instead of starting because you feel curious or driven, you start wondering whether you're allowed to start. This habit becomes deeply ingrained, even when the authority disappears, even when no one is actually stopping you. The psychological structure remains. You continue behaving as if there's a gatekeeper, a silent judge, an invisible authority evaluating whether you deserve to proceed. Think about how many people say things like, "I'm not an expert yet. I don't have the credentials. Who am I to do this?" Those statements sound rational, but often they are just echoes of the approval systems we were raised inside. The strange part is that many of those systems no longer exist in the same way. Today, individuals have unprecedented freedom to create, publish, build, and share ideas. But the internal habit of waiting for approval survived the collapse of the external gates. It's like a ghost of authority. The doors open, but we still stand outside, waiting for someone to unlock it. And that ghost becomes even stronger in the digital world, because although the old gatekeepers faded away, new types of gatekeepers quietly replaced them. Not a person, but a system. For most of human history, gatekeepers were obvious. If you wanted to publish a book, you needed a publisher. If you wanted your music distributed, you needed a label. If you wanted to reach an audience, you needed access to television networks, newspapers, or radio stations. These institutions controlled visibility. They decided who would be heard and who would remain unknown. Opportunity depended on approval. But over the last 2 decades, something remarkable happened. Technology removed many of those barriers. Today, a single person with a laptop can publish writing, video, music, software, art, education, or entire businesses. Platforms exist where anyone can upload ideas instantly to a global audience. In theory, this should have created a world where people feel more empowered than ever. Yet, psychologically, many creators feel more hesitant, more uncertain, more dependent on signals of legitimacy. Why? Because the old gatekeepers were replaced by something more abstract, the algorithm. Instead of waiting for a publisher's approval, people now wait for visibility metrics, views, likes, subscribers, shares. Virality becomes the modern signal that says, yes, you matter. When a video gains traction, people suddenly feel validated. When a post goes unnoticed, they feel invisible. But here is the critical misunderstanding. The algorithm is not judging your worth. It is simply optimizing distribution. It is designed to predict engagement, not legitimacy. Yet our brains interpret those numbers emotionally. Low views feel like rejection. High views feel like acceptance. And slowly, without realizing it, many creators begin waiting for the algorithm to grant them permission to continue. If the numbers aren't high enough, they assume they should stop. If the response isn't immediate, they assume they aren't ready. But the algorithm was never meant to function as a gatekeeper of identity. It's just a system sorting content. Unfortunately, psychologically, it becomes something much bigger. A digital judge, a silent authority, a machine that appears to decide who deserves attention. And once again, the illusion returns. We behave as if we must wait for approval before we are allowed to exist creatively. Now, here is where the illusion becomes most dangerous. Waiting for permission rarely feels like waiting. It feels like preparation. People say things like, I just need to learn a little more first. I'm researching. I'm building my skills. And to be fair, preparation can be valuable. Learning matters. Practice matters. But the modern world created something unique, an endless supply of information. Tutorials, courses, guides, masterclasses, advice, strategies, frameworks. And consuming that information feels productive. Your brain interprets learning as progress. Watching a tutorial gives you a small reward of competence. Buying a course gives you the feeling of commitment. Reading another guide feels responsible. But there is a psychological trick hidden in this loop. Consumption mimics action. Your brain receives the reward of progress without the exposure of risk. Because real action carries something uncomfortable: judgment, failure, embarrassment, uncertainty. The moment you publish something, launch something, or attempt something publicly, you expose yourself. And the mind instinctively looks for ways to delay that exposure. Preparation becomes the perfect hiding place. You can spend months learning, years even, without ever facing the reality of trying. And the longer someone stays inside that preparation cycle, the stronger the illusion becomes. They begin believing they are almost ready. Just one more lesson, one more course, one more improvement. But readiness is a moving target. The closer you think you are, the more preparation appears necessary. And slowly, preparation transforms from a tool into a trap, a comfortable loop where ambition survives, but action never happens. Breaking the permission illusion begins with a simple psychological test. Ask yourself one honest question. Am I waiting for a credential, or am I waiting for a feeling? Because most people believe they are waiting for something external, a qualification, an opportunity, a signal from the outside world. But in reality, they are waiting for an internal emotion. They are waiting to feel ready, to feel confident, to feel legitimate. The problem is that those feelings rarely appear before action. Confidence is not the starting point. It is usually the result. Confidence grows from evidence, from attempts, from small failures, from learning through experience. Waiting for confidence before acting creates a paradox. You delay the only process that could produce the confidence you want. This is why psychologists describe agency as something behavioral rather than emotional. You act first, then the identity begins to form. Think about any skill you admire: writing, speaking, building, leading. No one begins those activities feeling qualified. They become qualified through repetition, through imperfect attempts, through exposure to uncertainty. Which means the real gateway to progress is not permission, it is tolerance. Tolerance for starting badly, tolerance for learning publicly, tolerance for the awkward phase that every skill requires. And the moment you develop that tolerance, something interesting happens. The illusion of permission begins to collapse because you realize something simple. No one was stopping you. You were just waiting for a feeling that only action could create. There is a quiet tragedy that happens in many lives, not dramatic failure, not catastrophic loss, but silence. Ideas that remain unspoken, projects that never leave notebooks, conversations that never happen. Years pass, and slowly the person who once imagined those possibilities becomes someone else, not because they chose a different path, but because they waited too long to begin one. Permission rarely arrives in dramatic ways. There is no ceremony, no invitation, no official moment where the world gathers together and says, "Now it's your turn." Life doesn't work that way. Most people who build something meaningful never received a signal that they were ready. They started uncertain. They started imperfectly. They started without approval. And over time, the act of starting created the legitimacy they once believed they needed first. This is the quiet secret behind almost every meaningful project. Action comes before recognition. Movement comes before confidence. And the moment you understand that, waiting becomes impossible, because you finally realize something that was always true. The person you were waiting for was never outside. There was no authority reviewing your readiness, no gatekeeper evaluating your worth. The door was never locked. You were simply standing in front of it, waiting for someone to open it. But the handle was always on your side. And the moment you reach for it, the illusion disappears.